Hi, Year 9, just a short little video today just to explain what I want you to do for your independent task. Now, as Friday is a bank holiday, you've only had 2 sort of video lessons today, and then this is for this independent task that I would like you to do. So I'm going to set you a practice piece of analytical writing to do today, or a piece of writing about how is Mr Birling presented in his big speech. So yesterday we went through my annotation of Mr Birling's speech, and we talked about why JB Priestley chooses to present him as such a foolish, arrogant man. So I'm going to give you 2 ways you can answer this. If you are someone who is very confident in English, particularly in how we write in mini PEs, then you can answer this question much in the way that we've been doing for years now, using mini PEs. Okay, so you can choose to write an analysis, and that would involve writing in mini PEs. However, if you're someone that is slightly less confident doing that without the support of your teacher in the room, because obviously we can't be there to support you as you're writing them, you can just write an explanation. So I'm just interested in your opinions and your thoughts. Okay, so you could write it as an explanation, or you could write it as an analysis in mini PEs. So whatever option you choose, you should mention some of the historical events Mr Birling mentions and how the use of these develops your impression of his character. So by historical events, I'm talking about the trade unions, I'm talking about the Titanic, and obviously World War I and World War II. So think about how what Mr Birling says about those events gives you an impression of his character. Now, what I have on the other 2 slides is just a little model here. This is what an explanation might look like. So if you choose to answer this question writing an explanation, what you write might look a little bit like this. So in his speech, Mr Birling is presented as being a foolish man who thinks that he is very knowledgeable about everything, but actually he is presented as being very ignorant and not really knowing anything, which makes him dislikable. For example, he mentions how the Titanic will never sink, which presents him as a fool to the audience watching the play, because they would have known the Titanic does sink, so Mr Birling clearly doesn't know what he is talking about. Here, Priestley is making the audience dislike Mr Birling, so we will dislike everything he stands for, that should have an S on, such as capitalism. So you can see here that this isn't writing as a mini PE. I've still talked about the Titanic, but what I haven't done is used a quotation and analysed the language here. So this is the slightly more straightforward way of doing this task. Okay? So if you want to write an explanation, then you can use this paragraph, have this paused on the screen as you're writing and use this to help you. So you should give yourself about 30 minutes to do this piece of writing and try and refer to as many things as Mr Birling says in the speech as you can. So if you feel confident in writing mini PEs independently, then you can choose to write an analysis. If you choose to write an analysis, you need to start with an overview. So how is Mr Birling presented? Summarise it in a couple of sentences. Why has Priestley chosen to present him like this? And then what you should aim to do in 30 minutes is write 3 to 6 mini PEs. So if you're going to do an analysis, you may well want to look over the extract, decide what quotations, 3 to 6 short quotations you're going to use. Remember, you should be writing chronologically, tracking your way through from the start to the end if you're writing an analysis, and think about how the words of your quotation reveal what you think about Mr Birling. Okay, so here is a model if you're going to do an analysis. In his speech, Mr Birling uses the adjective unsinkable to describe the Titanic, which Priestley uses to present Mr Birling as a portentous fool, as the audience in 1946 would know that the Titanic was a huge disaster. Here, Priestley is cleverly making the audience dislike and distrust Mr Birling, and therefore is successful in his intentions in making us dislike capitalism, which is what Mr Birling symbolises. So you may well want to do 3 to 6, however many of those you can do in 30 minutes. Okay? Now remember, this is just practice. We are just asking you to try your best. doing this work independently at home without the support of your teacher is really difficult. So whatever you are able to produce, we will be really, really pleased to read and give you some feedback on. The last thing I want you to do is give you a task that is going to stress you out or make you concerned. Okay, so just try your best. What I am most interested in is you writing about how Mr. Birling is presented in this speech. What do you think about him? What makes you think that way about him? Okay, so getting those thoughts down, that is what is important. Okay, so once you've completed your task, can you please email it to your class teacher and we will give you some feedback. Okay, have a lovely 3-day weekend, as much as you are able when you're all stuck indoors, and I will see you next week.